Every lie starts small. Every truth hits like a truck. The night I stopped believing him was the night I finally started believing myself. My name's Melissa. I'm 29. I live in Colorado Springs in an apartment that still smells faintly like the man who broke me. Most mornings, I wake up before sunrise. Coffee first, dark roast, no sugar. I sit on my little balcony, let the cool air hit my face, and watch the city start to breathe. The mountains look like shadows trying to wake up too. It used to be our ritual. He'd make the coffee, I'd burn the toast, we'd laugh about who would be late for work this time. Back then, it felt like love was something solid, like the mug in my hand, warm and dependable. But if I'm honest, I think I was in love with the idea of us more than the man himself. I met Ryan in my junior year at the University of Colorado Boulder. He was the kind of guy who owned too many hoodies, quoted The Office like it was scripture, and always had a half smile like he knew a secret about you. I was majoring in design, working at a campus coffee shop to pay rent. He'd come in late, earbuds in, laptop open, order an Americano and tip me in coins. One day, he asked if I wanted to join his group for a tailgate before the homecoming game. That's how it started. Red Solo cups, bad country music, the smell of burgers in the air. The kind of night that makes college feel like it's never going to end. We clicked easily. He liked that I was quiet but funny. I liked that he listened, or at least pretended to. Within weeks, we were inseparable. Late-night Taco Bell runs, sharing headphones on the walk to class, arguing about Marvel vs. DC while laundry tumbled in the dorm basement. He made me feel like I'd finally been chosen, like the invisible girl had suddenly become visible. After college, we both ended up in Denver. He got a job in sales. I landed a junior designer role at a small agency downtown. We spent weekends exploring thrift stores, hiking red rocks, and pretending adulthood wasn't as terrifying as it felt. Our first apartment was tiny, one bedroom, walls thin enough to hear the neighbors fight. We filled it with IKEA furniture and dreams bigger than our credit limits. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Every Sunday morning, we'd walk to a little cafe that had mismatched mugs and cinnamon rolls the size of my face. We'd talk about everything: how many kids we wanted, which city we'd live in next, what color our future kitchen would be. Looking back, it feels like a montage I can't rewatch without crying. 3 years later, on a crisp fall weekend, he proposed. We were hiking in the Rockies. The air smelled like pine and burnt coffee from the thermos he'd packed. He got down on one knee, the wind tugging at his jacket, and asked me to be his forever. I remember laughing and crying at the same time. There was a group of strangers nearby who started clapping, and I swear in that moment I thought, this is it. This is the life everyone talks about. We drove home blasting John Mayer, screaming the lyrics out the car windows. He kept glancing at my hand like he couldn't believe it either. I wish I'd known forever already had an expiration date. The first changes were small. He started staying late at work, client dinners, he'd say. He'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't his. I ignored it. Because that's what love does. It explains away the evidence until there's nothing left but excuses. One night, while we were watching The Office reruns, the same episode we'd seen a dozen times, his phone lit up. The name just said T. He turned it over so fast the screen left a ghost light on his face. When I asked, he smiled. Sasha from work, he said. Just the team planning a campaign. He kissed my forehead. You're overthinking again, Lise. And just like that, I convinced myself he was right. Our life still looked picture perfect. We hosted barbecues in our apartment courtyard. Neighbors brought potato salad. Kids chased bubbles under string lights. We played cornhole until someone spilled beer on the deck. On Monday mornings, he'd hand me my travel mug on his way out the door. Love you, he'd say. And I'd reply automatically, love you more. I didn't realize love could become a habit, something you say because silence would hurt more. Sometimes, when he was working late, I'd sit on the balcony alone, sipping cold coffee and listening to the city hum. Colorado nights are strange, quiet but heavy, like the air knows a secret you don't. I'd scroll through old photos, us at concerts, road trips, the silly selfies at gas stations. Then I'd scroll further down into the early days, where his smile looked different, real, unedited. I think that's when I started to realize something was slipping. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like sand falling through fingers. The months after our engagement were supposed to be magical. Pinterest boards, cake tastings, family dinners full of congratulations. But for me, it felt like planning a wedding to someone who was slowly disappearing. Ryan became harder to reach. He'd cancel date nights because the client moved the deadline. His phone was always face down, his tone always half there. When I'd ask if something was wrong, he'd laugh and say I was turning into a detective. Sometimes, I'd stand in Target holding sample wedding invitations, staring at the pastel fonts, wondering if he'd even notice what color I chose. He used to text me during the day just to say, "Miss you already." Now, if I got a text at all, it was just, "Busy, call later." I told myself this was what adulthood looked like: stress, bills, exhaustion. Everyone said the first few years of a career are hard. I didn't realize I was carrying both of us while he was already walking away. One evening, I came home early from work. The apartment smelled like his cologne, and there was a wine glass in the sink, lipstick on the rim, not mine. He said a friend had stopped by to drop off documents. I wanted to believe him so badly I actually convinced myself it was fine. That night, I met my best friend Kayla at our usual diner, the one with the neon sign and bottomless coffee. She noticed right away. "You're not sleeping," she said, stirring cream into her cup. I laughed it off. Wedding stress. But she didn't buy it. "Liz, if something feels off, it probably is." On the drive home, her words stuck with me. The city lights blurred through the windshield, the same road we'd once sung along to Taylor Swift on. Now every song felt like background noise to a life that wasn't mine anymore. Over the next weeks, the signs grew louder. He'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't wear. He'd shower before saying hi. Sometimes his phone would ring and he'd walk to the balcony, voice low, smile faint. I started staying late at the office just to avoid the quiet. My coworkers thought I was chasing a promotion. In reality, I just couldn't face the version of home that felt like a lie. Then came the night that still haunts me. It was a Friday. He said he was going out with friends from work. Just the guys, nothing fancy. He put on his leather jacket, kissed my cheek, and said not to wait up. I tried to smile, even joked, "Don't get into trouble." He winked. "You know me." I ordered Thai takeout, poured a glass of wine, and tried to distract myself with Netflix. The house was too quiet. Every tick of the wall clock felt like a heartbeat I couldn't calm down. By midnight, he still wasn't home. I told myself they probably went somewhere after. But then I realized his car wasn't gone. It was parked right outside. Something cold moved through my chest. I slipped on a hoodie, stepped out into the crisp Colorado night, and walked to the parking lot. The wind carried the smell of pine and distant rain. My hands were shaking before I even reached the door. The living room lights were on. Through the half-closed blinds, I saw movement. Two silhouettes. One laugh, soft, familiar, but not mine. I opened the door and the world went quiet. Ryan was on the couch. And beside him, a woman, her hair messy, her shirt half-buttoned. Their wine glasses were on the table, my blanket draped over both of them like the world had decided to mock me. For a second, nobody moved. He went pale. She looked down. And my heart broke so loudly it felt like the walls could hear it. "Melissa!" he started, voice trembling. I raised my hand. "Don't." He reached for words, but there weren't any that could survive in that room. "How long?" My voice didn't sound like mine. "Please," he said. "It's not what it looks like." Those words, I think I'll hate them for the rest of my life. I looked at her. She couldn't even meet my eyes. And suddenly I didn't need an explanation. Everything I'd been ignoring finally fit together, and it hurt worse than anything. I walked to our bedroom, grabbed my suitcase from under the bed, and started throwing clothes into it. He followed me, saying my name over and over. "Liz, please, it was a mistake." "I swear it meant nothing." I zipped the bag. "Then why does it feel like everything?" I left that night. Drove to Kayla's house with mascara running down my face and my heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. She didn't ask questions, just opened her arms and said, "Stay." The next morning, I woke up on her couch, sunlight cutting through the blinds, my phone buzzing with missed calls. 23 from Ryan, 2 from his mom, one text that just said, "Please come home." But home wasn't home anymore. It was a crime scene filled with memories I couldn't unsee. I spent days crying, sleeping, repeating the same loop of disbelief. How could someone who swore he loved me betray me so completely? How could I have been so blind? When I finally answered his call, his voice cracked. He begged, apologized, promised therapy, promised it was only once. But once is enough to destroy everything. I told him I needed space. And for the first time in years, I meant it. The week after I left felt like time stopped moving. Days blurred together. Sunlight, coffee, silence, repeat. Kayla would make pancakes and talk about normal things like grocery sales or new Netflix shows, trying to remind me the world hadn't ended. But to me, it had. I'd go on long drives through the outskirts of town, windows down, the cold spring air cutting against my cheeks. Sometimes I'd park near Garden of the Gods, watching the sun dip behind the red rocks until everything turned orange and quiet. It became my therapy before I could afford actual therapy. At night, the loneliness hit harder. I'd reach for my phone instinctively, wanting to text him about something stupid, a meme, a bad commercial, then remember he wasn't mine anymore. It's wild how habit can break your heart even after love is gone. Ryan kept calling, every day. Sometimes he'd cry, sometimes he'd yell, desperate for me to say something, anything. I stopped answering. But one evening, after a week of silence, he showed up at Kayla's door. He looked wrecked. Same hoodie from college, hair messy, eyes red. Kayla stood between us like a guard dog, but I told her it was okay. We sat on the porch, the air cool and thin. He started talking fast, about guilt, about mistakes, about how he didn't know what he wanted until he lost it. He said he'd been seeing the woman from work for a couple of months, that it was just a distraction. A distraction. That word stung more than any insult could. Because I realized, in his story, I was the constant, and she was the thrill. And he couldn't tell the difference between love and attention. When he said he wanted to fix things, I asked, why? Because you miss me or because you hate being alone? He didn't answer. And that silence told me everything. I remember standing up, wrapping my cardigan tighter around me and saying quietly, I hope she was worth it. Then I went inside, closed the door, and didn't look back. For the first time since everything fell apart, I slept without crying. Healing isn't beautiful. It's messy, uneven, full of days that feel pointless. I started therapy, stopped checking his social media, and spent weekends with my cousins in Denver. We'd barbecue in their backyard, the smell of grilled corn and beer in the air, kids running barefoot on the grass. Sometimes I'd catch myself laughing so hard I forgot what sadness felt like. I took road trips alone, drove up through Estes Park, sang along to country songs I used to hate, stopped at diners that still used jukeboxes. The kind of small, quiet places that remind you life exists beyond heartbreak. One night, while watching fireworks on the 4th of July with Kayla, she nudged me. Look at you, she said. You're finally glowing again, I laughed. I'm just sweaty, Kayla. But deep down, she was right. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel heavy. Months passed. I moved into a new apartment, smaller, sunnier, mine. I adopted a rescue dog named Milo. Every morning, we'd walk past the local coffee shop where the barista already knew my order. 1 black coffee for Melissa. It became my little piece of peace. One afternoon, while scrolling through Instagram, I saw Ryan's name pop up. He was tagged in a photo, smiling, same woman beside him, arm around her waist. They looked happy, and to my surprise, I didn't feel anger. Just closure because she didn't steal him. He gave himself away. And I finally realized I never lost a soulmate. I dodged a lifetime of doubt. It's funny how grief turns into gratitude over time. How something that once broke you can later become proof of your own strength. Now, when I sit on my balcony with my morning coffee and the mountain breeze brushing past me, I think about that version of me. The one who believed lies because she wanted love to last. And I'm proud of her. She had to break to learn what she deserved. If Ryan ever thinks of me now, I hope it's not with guilt. I hope it's with the quiet understanding that I loved him honestly, even when he didn't deserve it. And that love, even when it ends, is still a kind of victory, because I walked away without hate. Because I learned to choose peace over pain, because I finally started believing myself. A year is a strange thing. It sounds like a long time when you're counting the days, but when you look back, it's just a blink between 2 different lives. Last fall, I was crying into takeout boxes and sleeping on a friend's couch. This fall, I'm standing in line at a farmer's market, holding a paper cup of pumpkin spice coffee, smiling at a life that finally fits. I've learned to love quiet mornings again. The smell of coffee beans grinding, the hum of traffic below my window, the soft whistle of my kettle. Milo naps at my feet while sunlight crawls across the floorboards. It's peaceful. Not perfect, but peaceful. Sometimes I drive past my old neighborhood on my way to work. The apartment building still looks the same. Faded shutters, someone's laundry waving from the balcony. It doesn't hurt anymore. It just feels like a movie I once watched too many times. Work has gotten better too. I got promoted to lead designer, and my boss actually trusts my vision now. We laugh during brainstorming sessions, argue about fonts like they're politics, and I go home feeling full instead of empty. Last weekend, my parents hosted a barbecue, the kind that starts at noon and somehow lasts until sunset. My dad manned the grill, my mom passed out paper plates, and my cousins chased the dog through the yard while country music played on a Bluetooth speaker. It was one of those perfectly American summer afternoons. Smoky air, laughter, sweet tea, and freedom. At one point, my aunt asked, "So, are you seeing anyone these days?" I smiled and said, "I'm seeing myself. And she's finally doing okay." Everyone laughed, but I meant it. Later that night, I sat on the porch swing, fireflies blinking in the grass, and thought about how far I'd come from the girl who once begged a man to love her right. Back then, I thought heartbreak was the end. Now I know it's just an edit, the painful cut before the story finds its real direction. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear songs we used to play. John Mayer, The Killers. And instead of crying, I sing along, quietly, softly, like reclaiming something that used to hurt. I've stopped checking who's watching my stories. Stopped comparing my healing to anyone else's highlight reel. Because the best revenge isn't moving on fast. It's moving on fully. It's waking up one day and realizing you haven't thought about them in weeks. A few months ago, I ran into someone new. His name's Eli. We met at a friend's birthday dinner. He spilled wine on his shirt and laughed instead of cursing. That small moment of grace caught my attention. We've been grabbing coffee on weekends ever since. He's gentle. He listens. He doesn't flinch when I talk about the past. I'm not rushing it. I'm just letting it be. If Ryan ever reads this, and maybe one day he will, I hope he understands that forgiveness isn't for him. It's for me. Because I refuse to let his mistake define the rest of my story. Now, every morning when I step onto my balcony and the Colorado breeze brushes past my hair, I think about that night, the night I opened the door. And instead of feeling shattered, I feel grateful. Because that was the night I stopped waiting for someone to choose me. The night I finally chose myself. Love can end quietly. But healing starts loud, in the small choices, the deep breaths, the moments you stop checking the past for permission to move forward. Sometimes losing someone isn't the tragedy you think it is. It's the universe clearing space for the life you actually deserve. Would you still open that door knowing it would break you first but free you forever?